It's the one below Premier League, Championship. I'm not sure if they call that, they might even call that First Division. But Leicester over Birmingham, 2-0. Love learning about new names, new English soccer team names. Cheltenham is one that I didn't know before today. Cheltenham. Plymouth Argyle is one. And what did we get from the team that beat Manchester United? Grimsby Town. That's nice. It seems like there's an endless array of cool English soccer town names. With me now on the, I'm sure he shares this opinion, Sal Capaccio on the West Her hotline, leaving his podcast appearance down in Irving. Big college weekend, Sal, before we get to the NFL season. Your Orange are in Atlanta to face Tennessee. Texas, Ohio State is the headliner. And I was thinking of that when I was thinking about, the Bills opening with Baltimore, because you've got this Ravens game and then, several games in a row where the Bills might be or are pretty big favorites. Do you like it that way for them with this, maybe the hardest game on their schedule right away?
Yeah, well, first of all, speak for yourself. The headliner is Syracuse and Tennessee, I would say.
Okay.
No,
Fine.
It's fun. It is last night I was watching the UB game, and, who was it? Myers calling the game, and he said, I can't remember a week one this good. Like, how many really good football games there are this weekend in week one. And there have been some really nice ones over the years, but this is amazing. Yeah, I do from a college standpoint. I don't love it from the NFL standpoint. Last year, I really liked when the Bills opened with the Cardinals because I wasn't – you remember the year before was Monday night. The year before was Thursday night. Right. This year, Sunday night. I kind of like a nice routine Sunday 1 p.m. game. You have all these other really big games later. You got 17 games in the year, and you play them as you go. College is different. Now they are playing 11 games now, 12, whatever. I know that there's more. You only play teams once, even in your conference. And when you step outside the conference, that's when you do it. You do it early in the season to get it going. So I like the real good matchup early in the season like this.
Yeah. The soft open last year that was Arizona. And that was a good game. The Cardinals got ahead in that game and the Bills were tested. Well, we don't have to wait until next week, but we haven't really dug in on the Ravens matchup. And I'm not sure there's really much new. I mean, we've talked about these teams together, of course, multiple times before. Do you see them the way the betting markets do, the way the playoff game was, is pretty much dead even?
Yeah, absolutely I do. I think they're very even teams. I think the game, like last year, could come down to a couple turnovers here or there. I mean, I thought the Ravens outplayed the Bills overall last year, but the Bills got the turnovers, and that's what helped them win the game. It was a big deal. So I think a game like that, there was a couple, the drop pass, of course, by Mark Andrews, and he had a couple of tough plays in that game, including a turnover and a fumble. That's, to me, what a game like this comes down to. I think it's two even teams, so you make one or two critical mistakes, and it swings the game. I don't think it's an indictment on the loser to being the worst team, the lesser team. We saw that last year. The Bills beat the Chiefs. The Chiefs still finished ahead in the standings. The Ravens beat the Bills. The Bills still finished ahead in the standings. So I do find them very, very equal, I guess, to one another. I think, when you say anything new, that's right. Nothing is, but I think what we're monitoring is the injuries, right? For the Bills, it's just a bunch of guys, mainly Tre'Davious White, and now Christian Benford a little bit, Curtis Samuel. And for the Ravens, it's Isaiah Likely, because I think he's a really big part of what they do. It'd be tough for me to see him already playing a ton in week one, considering he's come back from that foot injury. But it'll be interesting if he's on the field practicing next week.
I'm guessing he doesn't. I don't know, but it sounded like an 8-week injury. They did not put him on IR. The conversations we've had about Trey White and even Max Hairston, who did end up going to IR for at least 4 weeks. Well, the injuries are a big thing, and spotlight on the secondary, as we've talked about a lot, with Trey White in mind, and even the uncertainty at the safety position, Sal, if that's even the word at this point. It was a couple of weeks ago when I was on with Joe Ostrowski, Sam Panayotovich yesterday on their Bet Sweats show. Joe asked me, what is the biggest area of concern for the Bills? And he later told me, I really thought you'd say receiver, which, that's our brand and everything. But it's the secondary, and the line did move toward Baltimore, which I think might be, as much of because of the Trey White situation as anything else. Not that the Bills still aren't favored by a smidge there, but secondary was going into the offseason and is going into the season for me, and maybe for you, that the answer to that question.
I would agree. To me, secondary and defensive line was always the biggest need heading into the offseason. And we can go back to January, February, really after March, after free agency, and I was pretty strong on the fact that they would spend a lot of draft capital on that side of the ball and mostly at defensive line, and they're going to draft a corner somewhere pretty high. It turned out it was their first pick, which is Max Hairston, and then they did go defensive line with the next couple of picks. They also obviously went out and they signed Joey Bosa, Michael Hoyt, then we find out he's suspended. Larry Ogunjobi, find out he's suspended. So, yeah, I think they approached this offseason, Mike, with the same answer from an organizational standpoint to what you're saying, which is, where are the deficiencies or where do you have to address? And that included secondary. When you went out and signed Tre'Davious White, you signed Dane Jackson, you take Max Hairston with your first overall pick. So to me, it was both secondary and defensive line. But I think in this type of league, the way that you play in this game, like secondary was always a bit of a concern because you have to go out there and defend so much of the field against these great quarterbacks and receivers.
Right. We tend to, I think, collectively look down on the Dolphins, who the Bills will have here in Week 3. But there's danger in that passing game if the Bills are less than right in the secondary. Sal Capaccio on the Wester Hotline. I'm Mike Schopp, and Bulldog is off today. Well, I was looking at a chart that made the rounds today after the Micah Parsons trade about pressure rate and how Dallas has ranked, maybe this was a PFF chart, I'm not sure, might have been, first in the league over the last few years in creating pressure. And the Bills line, going through, say, the last 5 years, they were up there until last year, and then last year it dropped off. I'm thinking about Bosa here, Sal. Like, what are your expectations for him? Healthy to start the season? How much will he play? And how good can he be?
Mike, I've thought about this. I just did the pod with Matt, as you know, Matt Bove. We were out here, at Signals, and we talked about Bosa a little bit and this kind of thing. Not the same way you framed it, but super interesting for me because I find myself I'm stopping myself from getting as kind of excited of what he can be because I really think that he looked good in camp and he looked healthy in camp. And I think if Joey Bosa is healthy, I think he could be a real difference maker on this team. And I'm stopping myself short of believing that to be the case simply because he's had the injury concerns and the Bills have been down this road before with other players, namely, obviously, Von Miller. But I do think that the way he's looked in camp, how healthy he's been, and the fact that he's rolling into the season healthy, it is a really encouraging sign and could be extremely beneficial to this defense. How much he plays, honestly, I think that, he'll be out there quite a bit. And, yeah, there's going to be load management, but I don't think load management to me has to mean for this guy, well, we're just going to, monitor his reps during the game. I think it's more like when can we give him a little break? Like, what's the score in the fourth quarter? What's the situation? Is it a game where it's just – and, by the way, he's not a bad run defender. Not saying he would come off the field in run situations, but, maybe – when it's a different situation and it's more of a run game type of game, that he's not on the field as much. And when you're going passing, he is. But I think he's going to be out there quite a bit, to be honest.
A caller a day or two ago made a point, just sort of a passing comment, that the Bills have a better roster than a year ago. And I sat with that and tried to analyze it. I actually, when doing so, was comparing starting lineups and had sort of Hoyt and Ogunjobi kind of slipped my mind when thinking about this, and I appreciate that it was brought to my attention. Those are two, especially Hoyt, important, relatively important acquisitions, if not very, in terms of Hoyt. I think that could be really interesting. But the offense, the starting 11 is probably the same as last year. It was Coleman and Shakir on the field. I think it's the first play by how they do it, starting lineup, but could be the same 11 guys as last year. Defensively, there are some changes. How would you put that? Would you just sort of could you easily say it's a better roster than last year? I know we don't know what the rookies are going to be yet, especially Hairston.
Yeah, I guess so. Offensively, it would be the same except for maybe Joshua Palmer is in,
Yep.
right? And who would they lose? Amari Cooper and Matt Hollins. So really, you're really exchanging one for one with Hollins because Cooper wasn't there yet. So I don't think there's anything different there. Okay, so defensively, it is tough because Hoyt isn't going to be on the field yet. You got to wait 6 games for him. I thought he was the best defender at training camp for the Bills, if you give it an indication. I think that's how much he can help the team. I thought Michael Hoyt, from start of training camp through the final preseason game, was the best defensive player on the Buffalo Bills roster. Now, some of that is opportunity going against second and third stringers because they played him more, right? So that being said, I do want to have that caveat. So I do think that's an upgrade about him being on the roster and what he can do. I don't have it in front of me. Maybe you can look at it. Boba, it's funny. He just said this to me the other day. We were out at the facility. He said, Sal, have you gone back and looked at who started in that Arizona game for them on defense?
I have it.
Like, no. He said, go look at who started on defense compared to who's starting on defense this year. And, like, his takeaway was, and I don't have it in front of me. Maybe you can find it.
I have it.
His takeaway was, oh, my goodness. Like, yes, it's a much better defense now. Like, Matt Milano wasn't on the field that game. Taron Johnson, by the way, he went out of that game. He got hurt in that game, and he went out, and I forgot about that. They lost Taron Johnson in the middle of that game. So, yeah, I just by judging by that and thinking about it, I think that they have to be better, at least I think from your starting 22.
It is different. I'm not sure how quick I'd be to say better. I mean, Milano had such a great career. You'd probably have to give him the nod over Dorian Williams a year ago. It's Bosa instead of Epinesa. Epinesa isn't bad. We'll see what Bosa is, but you can be excited there. It's Bishop over Hamlin, assuming Bishop starts against Baltimore.
A total unknown for sure. That could go either way.
That could go either way. And it's Trey White, maybe, instead of Rasul Douglas. And I would not be I'm not ready to give Trey White the nod there. I mean, even if he's healthy. I think that could be I don't know. Douglas last year, Sal, no picks. He played the whole season. And I know they won all the time, but we were never in here after games being like, what's wrong with Rasul Douglas? I mean, it wasn't at a high level, and you didn't get those plays, like I said. But I didn't remember thinking all year that he was getting them beat, like Elam did. You know, Elam was another matter. So, I don't know. Like, if Trey White has that season, which, you know, it's saying, like, assuming a lot. It's just no interceptions, everything that went with it. But I'm not sure if it's that good or bad. It's sort of neutral for me.
It's interesting you say that. I do remember a lot of talk about Rasul Douglas last year, but you're right. It wasn't in the manner that, like, oh, my God, he got cooked. It was plain as day to see. For me, going back and watching and listening and looking at other people break things down, it was more about he just didn't make plays that he may have made the year before.
Yeah.
And that means, like, when the ball was in the air, instead of making a play, guy catches it, he tackles him, right? So you're not, like, seeing him get beat down the field, but their teams went after him, and he didn't come up with the same sort of stops that he did the year before. That was the thing about Rasul Douglas that I remember last year, and that's, I think, what translated into him not having those picks, whereas the year before, he was making plays on the football, and he just didn't make those plays last year. It was more like, okay, guy catches it, he tackles him in front of him. So he's not getting beat. You're not seeing that, but you're also not seeing the game-changing play. So we'll see. I don't know what's going to be happening with Tre'Davious White. Now, there's 2 parts to this. Is he healthy? Next Wednesday's the first day that we can find out if he practices, if he's going to have an injury designation, exactly what that injury is that's listed if he does have an injury designation. We'll see about that. And then the second part is, if he is healthy, is he good enough? Is he going to help the team? Is he going to be a quality level starting cornerback in the NFL? I think those things definitely remain to be seen right now.
Right. Yeah, a defense can get in trouble quick if there's a weak link, and whether it's him or his replacement, if he's not healthy, you know that teams are going to try to exploit that. We'll see how that goes if that happens, but they'll try. A few minutes left here with Sal Capaccio. When we spoke yesterday, we did not have the Micah Parsons news yet. I hate every time to sound the way to sound how I think everybody else sounds. It's just so one-way traffic on this trade, and how big of an embarrassment Jerry Jones is, calling him Michael Parsons too. Like, that had to be intentional. Yikes, Sal. Do you have a cleverer angle on this trade to make Dallas, look better than it sounds like most of us think, or maybe not?
No, not really. I think that the thing for me about Dallas was that they were forced into a situation that they could have controlled from the start, right? Like they were at a point where they kind of had to make this deal and get something done, but that's because of themselves and their own doing. And it goes back to something I've always said about Jerry Jones, at least over the last several years, which is Jerry Jones has long believed and still believes, and it's just not true anymore, and maybe at one time it was true, that there is just some special thing, an allure about playing for the Dallas Cowboys that everybody knows that he does not have to do what other owners have to do. I won't own the Dallas Cowboys. There's a star on the side of the helmet. We're the Dallas Cowboys. We're America's team, so you should be grateful that we want you to play for us, and therefore you don't have to sign to a larger contract, and I don't expect you to sign a larger contract. That is not the case anymore. The Dallas Cowboys have not been good in a quarter of a century, more than that. And I think that Jerry Jones doesn't understand that.
Yeah. I wonder what happens to the team now. Like, were they expecting – some people were expecting this trade. I think in the public we were not. I wonder what the players' expectations were about this. I mean, mine were that they just sign him last minute and he plays against Philadelphia on Thursday night. That's not happening. Mm-hmm. So what's your guess? Does the team come apart or –
No, I think already. I think in Dallas that happens anyway, just because there's so much going on. There's so much distraction. It's all about the noise. It's not about the football in Dallas. So I definitely think that can happen here. I don't think they're talented enough anyway to compete with the Eagles for the division. I mean, who knows? Maybe they have a great game next Thursday and they wind up winning, and everybody says, "Oh my God, look what happened! Micah Parsons got traded." And as you always say, you wait for the results before you then you have the narrative after, right? Maybe that happens. I just don't think they're good enough to compete, and probably not with Washington either, to be quite honest with you. I think maybe the more interesting facet of it is from the other side. I think what the Packers did is fascinating to me.
Sure.
I mean, they're going for it. They believe they have a Super Bowl team, and that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. I don't know if I'm there on Jordan Love, like they must feel he's there, or maybe they don't, which is why they wanted to get the pass rushers and say, we got to have a little help there because we don't have a Tier 1 quarterback over here, even though he's really good and we like him. Also, for many years, this is not something the Packers would do. They would not do something like this, pretty much ever. Andrew Brandt wrote about this. Andrew Brandt, who worked in their front office, basically totally dismissed the Packers when it was first coming up. Like, no, this is not something they do. But remember, Mark Murphy is no longer the president there. He's from Clarence, Mark Murphy. He's no longer the president. Do you know who the president is now of the Green Bay Packers?
No.
Eddie Policy, Carmen Policy's son.
Oh, I wonder how he got that job.
And he came from the Niners, right? The Niners lineage, where, winning Super Bowls and I think being aggressive and go back in the Deion Sanders, things like that, right? This is, I just think it's kind of a different thing for the Packers now.
Yeah. Yeah. Elliot Wolf is the Patriots GM now, right? And or vice president of player. I wonder how he got. Oh, right, Ron Wolf's son. Sure, yeah, makes sense. Yesterday they were writing about how awful his first year was. Yeah, geez, he's qualified. He's got to be qualified though. All right, sorry if I sound bitter. Sal, enjoy Labor Day weekend, and we will fire things up week 1 next week.
All right, you got it. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you. Sal Capaccio on the Wester Hotline. His appearance is brought to you by New York's only outlet liquor, your place to buy a case. Outlet Liquor, what's your outlet? Yes to the Green Bay points, but Parsons is young. This does not have to be – this is not Von Miller. This is a player that you'd want to have retire for your team in 7 or 8 years or whatever that might be. I'm not thinking that it might be a shorter shelf life than, say, a quarterback, but who knows? This is short-term and long-term. And we saw yesterday their betting lines move as soon as this trade became public, in their favor, of course. But I think if they don't win this year, I mean, you can ask the questions about Jordan Love independently. But if he's good or even very good, they don't win this year, you might like him just as much next year, right? I mean, Parsons he was on his first contract, I think. 803-0550 for your calls. I heard a listener call in this morning and say he was glad that the Bills wouldn't have made this move. I want to be careful with the wording. Wouldn't have made this move. And Jeremy and Joe both said, well, we don't know that. In fact, I think they would have. If they had the player, what would have happened? They wouldn't have traded him.